Why don't I do a quick demonstration so you can see how the distribution fits using SMC. We'll work through one part. I won't do the whole thing because we have quite a big exercise ahead of us. What I would like to do is show you the exercise that we're going to be doing. It's only about 30 pages or so, so don't panic. But I want to show you exactly from the standpoint of this drawing, I hope it helps, to see what we're going to do. Now, I've got a whole bunch more information in the slides. I mean, I'm touching about 15% of the information at the moment that we have in the slides. I would like to propose that we get you guys working here in Spear 1, that we get you on the machines and start working rather than sitting. You've had a soft morning, you've had lunch. Start getting some engineering under your hands and start working in this distributed environment. So I'm going to show you a little bit about the distribution, how it's done. But in the exercise, there's a very precise plan that I want you to follow, that I would like you to follow, in order to ensure that we do this very systematically, because the configuration has to be systematic. What I've shown over here on this flip chart are 3 projects. We have 4 projects. We've actually gone a step beyond what I would say fundamental distributed systems. We're going into the area of advanced training. But I think it's important that as trainers, some of you, that you understand a little bit deeper the concept and the complexities behind this distributed system rather than, okay, I linked 3 projects, and for an engineer with basic experience, fine. For a trainer, we want to go a bit deeper, and then therefore I've given you maybe more of a challenge, let's say, to try to get these 4 projects running in distribution. Okay, we have a step-by-step instructions on how to do this. I'm not leaving you just with this drawing and say go for it. I want to give you some, when we end the live session, I'll give you a lot of detail about what we've already got set up here, so you know what you're faced with when you go to the machines. And then we'll step you through this process. But let me now take you into the world of the distributed systems and demonstrate for 2 projects how to set this up. So I'm going to switch now, Marcel, to 2 beamers. I hope you can see them both. And we're going to work on this distribution. They may look the same to you, but they're 2 different servers. I've got a virtual machine and another server. I've got 4 projects already created. As you can see here, I have distribution 01 BA, distribution 01 FS, dist 01. And here I have dist VM and dist VM, BA and FS. So I've said to myself, why the heck would I want to do a distributed system in the first place? So this is part of the planning, asking your customer, what exactly are you looking for here? In our case, we decided that we're integrating a building automation subsystem in one project, and we're integrating a fire system in another project. This could be because of some regulation, or the customer wants to keep his distributed system segmented or his subsystem segmented in different projects. There are different types of reasons why you might want to do this. Another reason we talked about is project size. We exceed in our project the system limit of 150,000 objects. Then we have to think, well, if I'm going to do that in a distribution, how am I going to split this project up? Maybe one way is by discipline, for instance. So this is why we've done it this way. So on my virtual machine, you can see I have 2 projects. I've already got HDBs linked, so it's straightforward, nothing funny about this. 2 projects, SQL Server Express, each with their own HDB, history database. This project is started. If I go to the other project, the FS project, takes a few minutes to update, but there it is, started. So everything fine. Keep in mind, another thing about licenses, the question comes up, how can I enable and start 2 projects in a distribution, or even more projects in distribution? There's a license quantity that you have to make sure is equal to the number of projects that you want to have running at the same time. So you'll see this in the exercise that you open LMU, and there are certain quantities in the license that you need to say, when you get a license, I have 5 projects in distribution. I want to run them all at the same time. So you need in your license quantity 5 for the number of PMON services that you can be running at the same time. That's also important to know. Have a look. Distribution participant on the fire project has been enabled. Okay, so that's the first thing we're looking at. Is this guy a distribution participant? He is. Before that though, what's his system name and what's his ID? Over here. What is the distribution port? Just what we talked about. Those 3 things, 4 things need to be configured beforehand. So what we've done, if we go to the lab, you'll see we have all this mapped out for you. We've told you use a specific system name, use a specific ID, use a specific distribution port, etc., etc. So we've laid it all out for you. I've given you tables, or I will be giving you tables, to tell you from each server what you need to set up and configure. So it makes it very straightforward for you. So distribution participant, and the BA project is also set up the same way. Distribution participant with its own unique system ID and naming, and port number is different in this case. As you can see, 12778. The other one was 12779. The reason being, 2 projects on the same server, the port numbers always have to be different. So that's why I've set that up this way. On the case of your servers, none of this is set up. I'm taking quite a big leap ahead because I want to show you how to get all these running in a distribution. Okay? So these are running, and the distribution is set up. If I go down, as soon as you enable a project for distribution, you get 2 new expanders, distribution participants, distribution connections. So if we go in there, you'll see that I actually have 4 projects connected to this project in distribution. It's going to be looking for one project that happens to be the FS project on this virtual machine, and the distribution will also contain or connect to these 2 projects that are up on my server here. The reason you see them already is because we did a partial configuration of the distribution already. There's other information here that is of interest also, obviously. All the system names are shown. The IDs of the projects that are in distribution with this one project. Which extension modules are actually being used. There's some rules for extension modules. There are some rules for installation, languages, and all these things I will talk to you about in the late afternoon session. We're already in the afternoon, so it would be a late afternoon session. And these things are more of an indicator of which extension modules are added to those specific projects. Okay, then we have another expander called distribution connections. And this you will start to see and build up as you create the distributions. So really what I have here is I'm showing from where, this is called the originator project, from where the distribution configuration was carried out. So I'm looking on my virtual machine at this BA project, but I actually did actually carry out from the originator project, which is this guy, this bidirectional distribution to this fire safety project within the same server. So when you see an arrow like this, it's telling you that the visibility to the 2 systems, BA and FS, is bidirectional. So I could log into either this project or the FS project, and assuming I'm logging in as a global user, I will see both system nodes. Is that okay for you, everybody? If you want to, I can move this connection field over between the 2, and now you can see exactly what that means. So we actually have this bidirectional configuration here. I've set that up from this project to the FS project, and to the other one other project on my other server. Okay, basic bit of information just so you can see how this is going to look like at the end. And now let's take a look, carry the step a bit further now, and go into the process of connecting these two projects to these two. Then we'll do some configuration for the global user. We'll log in, and hopefully, if this whole distribution is working the way we expect, we should expect to see all 4 system nodes in the browser of the project that we're logged into. It's okay for everybody? You don't know? You won't believe it until you see it. Is that the case? Okay, let's try it out. So I'm going to use my guide here to help me as well. So all the work I'm going to do now is on this server, which is my physical server. You gentlemen will be working each on your own server, but you will be working together between 2 servers to get these 4 projects in the distribution. So you could actually work just in one machine and create a single server distribution between 2 projects. But I want you to do a distribution between 4 projects. And what we're doing here is I've got a sequence of steps going in a counterclockwise direction. So the same way a hurricane spins, counterclockwise. We have distribution sequence 1, which I've already set up. You saw that. Distribution participant, distribution port. What I've done afterwards, after I've configured distribution, I saved the project and I started it. That's it. When we do connections between projects, there is always a n-1 connection, because the first project that we enable, we don't make any connections to it. We make connections to it, but not from it to other projects. That's what I wanted to actually say. So this part is fairly straightforward. So whoever happens to be working on that particular server goes to the FS project, sets it up as a distribution partner, saves it, starts it. Now you're asking yourself, why am I starting with the FS project? And the answer, it's totally arbitrary. I started to make it systematic so that you will understand the process. I'm not saying you have to start there, but I'm just saying it makes it easier to understand the whole cycle of the distribution setup. Once I've done that, I go to my billing automation project on the one server. I enable it. I added the distribution port. I have to change this distribution port because this is one server, as you can see here, server 02. And I point this project to this project. So I make a bidirectional, a meshed, fully meshed connection between this project and this project. Then I'm assuming that on this server, some user is going to want to log in to this project. So once I've saved it and made a synchronization, because the systems have to become aware of each other, and I can do that by using a synchronization. Once I've done that, I can activate this project, start it, and that would allow, at the end of the day, a global user to log in from this server and see both these nodes, assuming we created a global user here. We're not doing that yet. We're going to continue with the distribution connections. So, server 2, distribution done. Now I go to my second server, physical server, and I've got 2 more projects that I want to connect in this distribution. So I go again, just purely by my own thinking to try to make it systematic and as easy to follow as possible. We start here with the FS project again on the other server and enable it, set the distribution port, and now I have to create 2 connections to the projects on this server. You can see disto2FS, disto2BA. I make a connection from here to here and from here to here, bidirectional. Okay, so far so good. Save it, sync it to make sure all the distribution managers become aware of each other. There's some other synchronization things going on in the background, and start the project. So now I have 3 started projects connected together bidirectionally, but I have no way to log into them yet, not even there. Final step, which is what we're going to show you. From the BA project on the first server, exactly the same steps. Now I have to make 3 connections. So I'm pointing to here, I'm pointing to here, I'm pointing to here, all bidirectional. And I'm going to make it the data master. One project has to be the data master, because when we do the configuration of these global users, they will get replicated. Global users, groups, event schemas, a lot of things are being replicated from the data master downward. And so we need to have this one set, make our connections, save, sync, activate this project, start it, or you can activate this project if you want, regardless of which, start it, log in with the global user, and we should see all 4 system nodes. So that's what we're trying to do in this exercise. Any questions? Yes, sir.
The sync, do we need to do the sync just at the very beginning, or do we need to do the sync every time when you updated one of these server systems?
So the question is about sync, when to do a sync, and we'll show you that in a minute. What I do is, as I work through the distribution, I make a sync at every step, with the exception of the first project, because I'm not making any connections. Whenever I make a connection, when I've completed that, I make a sync. Hypothetically, but I haven't tested it, you could do all these connections and then from the last project make a sync, and it should sync up everything. But I'm trying to do it systematically and make sure that things are synced up as I go along, just to take the uncertainty out of my mind that maybe a sync didn't take place. I'm going to have some missing or inconsistent data. So I'm really just trying to make sure the data is consistent every time I do a connection. Later on, if you make a change to a project, you should be able to sync from the, let's say, the local system or the data master, and it should sync it up for all projects. Yeah, but I'm just kind of taking maybe a rookie's approach to it at the moment to make sure everything's consistent.
Once more a question to the data master. It doesn't matter which of the server will be set as a data master.
Correct.
And what's the better set? Set the data master the first server, the last server, or doesn't matter which one is set?
The question is, what is the recommended, which project is recommended to be the data master? Keep in mind, they're all local systems that you're connecting together. So it doesn't really matter which the data master is.
And also in process of the activation, we'll start with one project and step by step. So is it better to first, the very first project which we set in the distribution configuration, to set it as a data master or not?
I don't, the issue is he's asking me, is it better to start the process and say the first project I configure for distribution should be the data master? The rule, there's no fixed rule here, okay? Because any project can be a local system. So you can log in from anywhere, means that any project in the global distribution can also be a data master. So there might be a preference on the customer site that he's a BA, building automation guy. So we've set the distribution, the data master to a building automation project. He always logs into that project. He knows from habit that that's his preferred project, so all the global data is also there. Could be the other way around. There could be another reason to have another project as the data master. The point being that whichever project is the data master, that's where all the global data has to be configured from.
Okay.
So that's the best answer I can give you at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Yes?
Is there any error message when you're doing the sync? Is there any config
Yep.
ID?
We'll show you that in a minute. We have a couple of consistency checks we can do. When we sync the distribution, we'll get a message saying that there's a log has been created. Do you want to see the log? We'll look at that. And the other thing that we can look at is a data consistency check. and we can check that the data is consistent between the synchronized projects. Okay, I'll have a look at that. Okay, so if everybody's still with me, I hope so. Let's take a look at how we're going to configure this particular project, this fire project, first of all, for distribution. You can see already that because of time constraints, I've already set the system name and the ID. Distribution port, I have to check my table to see if that's the right one, but we've done some pre-configuration just because it takes some time. So I've already got this particular thing set up. Let me come back now, just a minute, and show you what we have available for you. This is an important page in the exercise. As you're going to see that the different servers that we've named from 1 to 11 in our Spirit 1 here will be associated with using the server name in our project naming. And then we've also already given a system name and a system ID to each project. Not given them yet. This is what you're going to be doing as the first step of the lab. But I want you to use these tables, this table for the system name and identifiers. And I would like you to also use for the distribution ports, the distribution port table. So 2 tables to give you some guidance there. So let's have a look here. I'm on computer 01, and I'm going to set up this distribution here. So let's come in. You can see I don't have any availability here to enable the distribution. So I'm already thinking, is there an issue here, or is there something I need to do? Good question. Because we've come in and we've restored an image, the project is stopped. So in order to get this active, I'm going to take a look and start the project, stop it again, and then see if I've got access to the distribution. So it's running. I want to get to this guy here, this particular icon called Change Distribution Info. So let's stop it again, and hopefully we'll see what happens when it's stopped, if we get that activated icon now. Okay, so now we're back. Thank you for your patience. While I am on this project, it is important that you know that we have to share the projects, just like we have to do when we have a remote client or a FEP with an installed client where we need to access the project on the project server. We have to share the project, and we have to share the project with all the users, operating system users, if you will, excuse me, that are going to be logging into that project, Desigo CC project. And you see here I have 3 users set up. These are coming from our domain, the trn.local domain that we have set up here in Spirit 1. And these are domain users that I've identified as the users that are going to be logging in to one of these projects. So I have to identify them in the shared project to give them access to it. You'll be doing the same thing. You could say, okay, I don't want to worry about which specific users. You could say in that specific domain, I want any domain user to have sharing access to that project. Probably not a good idea, but you could do it. So I've selected these 3 specific users because those are the ones I'm logging in with. This Gadu user in our domain is going to be my global user. So I've identified 12 or configured 12 different users in our domain with the naming of Gadu and then the computer number. So these are the users you'll be using as well for your projects. So make sure you've shared the project. Another thing I should mention is communication security. Very important. For our purposes, we're going to use unsecured. We have 4 projects on 2 different servers. In order to establish any communication between all the different ports between projects on 2 servers, I need to at least set the projects as unsecured at the very minimum. If I set them to standalone, I get no communication between the server on different projects. So we're using unsecured. We'll talk about security deployment for distributed systems later on, but just so you know, the basic minimum you need for communication between servers and these projects is unsecured. Important to know that as well. So that's probably not set up on your servers, so you need to look at that. If I have a distribution on a single server, the communication settings can be anything. They can be standalone, a mixture of secured, unsecured, whatever you like. Because within the machine boundary, the security aspects of communication between projects are not considered. So you could set them to standalone and they would communicate just fine with each other. Okay? So here we have unsecured shared project. Okay, so I'm just going to come back down to my table now. And I want to look at this particular instance here. On the FS project, distribution participant is enabled, and the distribution port is 1779. So I'm going to go back to edit mode, and I'm going to change this to 1779. And unfortunately with SMC, I have to go to the second page in order to save it. And now I have to set up the connections. So the connections are looking like this. From this project, bidirectional connection to the virtual machine, in my case, the two projects on the virtual machines. So let me set up the distribution partners. As you can see, if I come into distribution participants, I have computer 01, FS project. So that's default because I've set it as a distribution participant. And now I have to add the other projects I want to have in the distribution. And here I go. So I have two possibilities. It's very similar to what we do when we have a installed client and we want to add it to the shared project or make it aware of the shared project. We can browse the domain for the computer where the project is shared, talking from the viewpoint of a remote installed client, or I can use what's called add, and all the information I want to give towards configuring that installed client for information about the shared project, I have to add manually. So there's two different approaches for distribution. I can say add, and I have to physically go in here and type in all the individual information according to the project that I want to add in my distribution. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Very error prone, and if you have all that information available, that's also another question. So this is not the preferred workflow. But I show it to you as trainers so you can see what the options are. The option we would prefer to use is the browse function. Because in the browse function, we go out on the domain and I type in the computer name, the server where the projects are located that I want to add as distribution partners. This computer happens to be called VMSRV, check name. That's the virtual machine, which I have as a separate server in this case. And when I click on that, it lists all the projects that are available in its SMC. So I'm looking at the virtual machine, which could be another physical server, and I've asked from my computer 01 to go out in the domain and list all the projects that are on that particular server. Does it quite well. The only thing is it lists every project on that server. Whether or not you want them in distribution or not, they are going to be there. So if I had a third project, project C, which was not enabled as a distribution partner or enabled for distribution, I would still see it in here because it's just a list of all the projects in SMC. And I could even add that project as a distribution participant in my distribution, but it wouldn't work. It will allow me to do it, but it's not configured as a distribution partner Therefore, although I can configure it and add it into my system, it won't be available. So the distribution flag is very important there. Now what I can do here is I can go ahead and say, yes, add both of those partners into distribution, add distribution partners. I will do that now. And once I've done that, they appear in the distribution connections window. So you can see here, VMBA, VMBS, default is bidirectional. Bidirectional. Let me move this over. So here I have from the originator project, which is FS up at the top, to these two other projects on my virtual machine, bidirectional connections. The originator project is the project in focus in SMC, which you see here. I could even say now, maybe I want to set up a hierarchy between these projects. And the FS project is going to be the overarching system that will be able to see the other two systems, but not the other way around. So you can set that up here. Now what I'm doing is just showing you that it's possible, but the requirement for us is for a full mesh. So that's why we have it set up like this. And I said now, once we've done that, add these two projects, save the settings, and now synchronize. So synchronize is up here in the distribution participant expander. Synchronize distribution configuration. Let's take a look at what happens. Sync. And we get a message. Here we go. Okay. Synchronization complete. Do you want to open the log file? Now, I just want to go back on my virtual machine because you may get this situation. If SMC is running on your other server and you're trying to do a synchronization, SMC won't let you do that on the other machine unless it's shut off, shut down. So the refreshing mechanism requires that the SMC on the other servers be shut down in order to carry out a proper synchronization. So you may get this. One of the projects has been changed from outside, from this server. During synchronization, please restart SMC to avoid inconsistency. You want to stop SMC now. So I will say yes. I'm closing it, shutting it off here. And now we're hoping for the situation where we have a synchronized system between these three projects. Let's have a look. We always get the message, do you want to open the log file? And when we do that, we see the report for the two projects on the other server, that partner fields have been updated successfully. So what does that mean? It means essentially that the information that we've set up in this project has been synchronized to the other projects, and all the config files of all the projects get all the entries about the information about the synchronization. So it means you can go in now to this config file. Here we go. I think we're on local disk, GMS projects, FS, config. And if we open that with some particular application, Notepad for instance, and then we get a field here called dist, and we start to see the information about the different distribution configurations that are happening in the system. So that's all going into this config file that the WinCC platform is using. Another thing we can do is check for distribution consistency. So maybe as what Raphael asked a little while ago, we make a change to some project, I'm syncing it, and then I want to verify for myself to have peace of mind that the distribution is consistent on all projects. So I can say distribution check is completed, open the file, and we get a feedback that there are no inconsistencies in the connection setup. So two things to do. You always should sync, of course, if you make changes. But a further step is have a look at the distribution consistency to see that the connections are established okay. Let's start the project. FS. Let's just scroll down the manager details and make sure, just verify for yourself that the new distribution manager is actually added to the project, which you see here. It's running. So whenever we start the project, the distribution service should also start. So it's a good sign. Let's go to BA. The BA project, which is our final project of the 4. So sequence number 4, configuration sequence. We're going to do all these steps again. One extra one, adding it as the data master. So let's go to edit mode. We're going to enable it as a distribution participant. We're going to set the distribution port, which is 17798. And we're going to set it as the data master. So this picture is in your lab. You'll be able to follow that as well. Okay, let's save it. And now let's make the connections. So now I'm making 3 connections. Everybody's nodding. You understand? Good. Okay, 3 connections now. First of all, edit. I'm going to browse to the VM server. And I'm going to add, just as I did with the Fire project, but now I'm pointing from the BA project. I also have to make the same connections again. Add those 2 projects that are on the other server. Add. And I'm going to browse to my local machine, computer 01, and pick up the FS project, this project, and make that connection. Browse. In this case, it's computer 01. Check name. Click on it. And you can see I've got other projects in this SMC. So we're not restricting only to distribution partners when we view this list. But the only one I actually want here is Disto1 FS. So be careful if you're going to have other projects on your servers because we're doing other things later in the week like DI migration with its own project, MM8000 migration with its own project. So be careful which particular projects you're adding here. There are my 3 projects. Let's save it. Next step, yes. And synchronize. And it's running the synchronization you see down here in the bottom left of the SMC. Open it up. It's updated the VM projects and it's added the Disto1 FS project. Everything looks good there. And I'm going to check the data consistency one more time. No inconsistencies. Everything looks good here. Let's start the project. You'll notice also that above an SMC, my active project is the Disto1 BA project. So I made that active already, which means that from this computer, I can only log into Dist1 BA because it's the active project. If I want to log in and create global users from the FS project, I have to make that the active project. So right now, the next step is I have to have a local user access to the local system, which is going to be the BA project, in order to create, I just lost my stick, in order to create, where was I? In order to create the global users, global groups, global scopes, and get them replicated down to the other 2 systems, or 3 systems. So the active project that I'm logging into is my data master. Let's take it now the next step, get into the system, create our global users, switch operators, and everything being equal, we should see all 4 systems. Let's see. I'm very excited about this. Okay, Desigo CC client, installed client in this case. I'm not working with web clients. And first thing you'll see is the domain. We've actually set the domain already to the TRN domain. And when you go into your machines, your servers, you're going to be using, even in your Desigo projects, a domain user that we've already configured for you. So it'd be logging in with a domain user into the project, and he is an administrator in the local system. And I'm using EDUC01A. And we'll take a look now at the configuration of global users. Okay, so the first thing you see, because I happen to be this morning in the logical view, the session logs me back in. It's a persistent flag in the system. He knows that this guy, last session that he logged in with was at the logical view when he left the session. Let me switch to the management view. And here's what we see now in the management view for this local project. I'm logged in as a local user, Tim, local user, EDUC01A, and we see the system node here, only for the local project, the local system. Project, system 10, disto 1BA. That's the system name I gave this project. We don't see project names here anywhere. I can go description name, and you see, I see just project management view, system. So really, we're only looking at the system name. So if it's system 1, 2, 3, 4, and you leave it like that, obviously, your users are going to have problems understanding what they're actually looking at. That's why I explicitly put the project name in the system name. Okay. We're in good shape so far. At least I can log in. So I said that in order to see these nodes, establish the visibility, we need to have global users. So let's go down into system settings, and you'll find some new parameters that we can now set in the version 3 when we use distribution. So here's the standard list of users here. And you can see I have EDUC01 as an administrator. He has, when we get to, he's a member of the administrators group, so I'll get to that in a minute. You can see all the rights. But let me make a copy of this guy. And you can see when I do a save as, I get a new user login dialog or a configuration dialog. And I have user type, Windows or Desigo CC. Which user are we using? Which type of user? Windows, thank you. Windows. And now we have a new field, distribution. So I'm going to make him a global Windows user. And I'm going to select a user from the domain that we've already created in the domain, and you'll be doing the same thing. So I'm going to select Windows Global, browse, go out to the domain, trn.local, and you'll see if I type in GEDU, G-E-D-U, that I have 11 different users. So I'm from Computer 01. I'm going to assign GEDU 01 as my global user. Raymond will be working on Computer 02. He's going to assign GEDU 02 as his global user. Raphael is going to go to Computer 11. He'll use GEDU 11, etc., etc. Okay, so say OK. There he is, TRN GEDU 01. I have to enable him. And now I've taken over all the information that the other user had, GEDU 01, except he's now you see the new column here, global user enabled. Save. Check the profile out. These are the profiles from all the projects that are in distribution. We're going to use TBS-EN for obvious reasons. I've got alarms coming from the fire system. I've got alarms coming from the BA system. I want to see those hopefully in the event lamps. Okay? And the event schema should also be consistent, which would be EN. So I make sure I have a consistency in all the projects between the event lamps that I see, as well as, for the global user I'm saying, the event lamps I want to see, as well as the emerged event list, that I get all the events. So I'm going to leave it at TBSEN. And everything else looks good here. Let's apply him to a security group. And now it gets interesting as well. So let's take administrators, do a save as, and you see I get exactly the same type of dialogue or selection potential possibilities. Group type is user. I could create a management station group if I wanted to as well. But a user group, and we'll make him global. And then we'll just set the naming. So I've global, name him, global admins. Okay, here he is. Again, the global flag has been set on this, so this means to the system, these distribution managers are going to see this and go, this has to be replicated to the other projects that are in the distribution. Okay, group type is user. I'm going to add my Gadu01. And now I'm going to make sure that because he's all powerful, all the application rights are set for him. I'm just going to disable and re-enable to make sure everything is set. And now I have to look at the scope. This guy. So you can see immediately for the administrator group, the default scope was set to System 10 Disto 1 BA. I could leave that scope, save my global user, log in as a global user. What am I going to see? Sys 10 DA, right? BA. That's it, because my scope is locking me down only to that system. And that's what I said earlier. Global users can have access to everything, or you can say, or the customer can tell you, I have a global user group that are high-powered administrators, can do everything in all systems, and I have global users that can maybe only see 2 distributed systems, not 3, not 4, whatever scope, concept, or strategy suits the project. Okay, so, but I want to be the global master for all systems. So I'm going to remove this scope, but I still need a scope. So let's go to add and see what the system provides me with. Wow, good guess, Artem. Artem, we have a participant who's very, very attentive, following this with great interest. So the system provides us a global scope, not configured, unfortunately, unconfigured. So now I have to go ahead and add all the property group settings, command group settings, if I have a UL system, the ownership settings, whatever it might be, status, events, advanced command groups, create, delete, etc., etc. He has full rights now. He's got all application rights. Save him. Okay, so we've done the 3 things I said we needed now. We need the global user. We need a global group. We need a global scope. They're going to get replicated down. The data master will handle that for us. And if we now, assuming we've set up the configuration properly, correctly, we should now be able to log out, log in with our global user, Gadu01, and the expectation is we see all systems. Operator, switch over. So let's hopefully, we've done this all the way through correctly. Okay, so now I'm in the application view. You can see 4 system nodes there. Let's go to the management view. I actually have some integrations that I've done, so we're getting some events up in the taskbar. I have 2 projects with integrations. I have a fire system in one project, and I have a PX TRA. In the 2 projects on the virtual machine, I've done no configuration. I haven't done any integrations, but nevertheless, you see the 4 system nodes. 1, 2, 3, 4. We can now, as a global user, I can come in here, I can integrate, I can say from this project, I'm logged in to the BA project here. Well, let's go here. I'm logged into this project, I now have the rights to come down into another server, go into the FS project on another server, go ahead and create a driver here, because I'm now a global administrator in this machine. Roger, do you think I should try this? No, let's try it. So here we go. Create a new BACnet driver. I'm in another totally other system. And there's my BACnet driver in the other system from the local system that I'm logged into over on another server. So this is the interaction between systems and the application, applying different applications and your rights as a global user to actually configure the entire system on another server. We've seen in a very short summary now, because I want to get you working on the system, we've seen now how the configuration of distributed system works, what the intention is, at least in this case, to separate the project as far as a discipline. There are other reasons why you might want to create distributed systems, but I'll talk about those later when we come back to do some more theory. But that is the basis for the engineering of a distributed system between 4 projects.